Okay.
Just YouTube.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to have anybody join us.
We'll find out.
Chip says it's the middle of sports season, so.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, I personally find it impossible to track this because I can't see anything. I can't see any of the comments, nothing. So I don't even think of it being there. So to me, it's just you and me having a conversation.
Okay, well, yeah, me too. But if I see a comment, I'll throw it up there. So
Right.
you don't see the YouTube comments in the right-hand column?
No, just private chat and then comments within StreamYard. So I can't see anything else.
Yeah, I've never been in one of these where I wasn't the guy running it, so
Yeah.
I have no idea what it looks like when.
Yeah. I mean, you is the only use I make of this tool, but that's fine. It works for seeing you and you and me talking.
Yeah, I do the Circle of Fellows for IABC, but I've also been using it without streaming, just to record video and audio because I find the quality is better than Zoom and Teams.
Okay.
The recording quality. So anyway.
So I'm just loading up Audition, which is throwing up an error. Hang on a sec. I was using this yesterday and nothing changed. Nothing changed, and here we are.
Of course.
Put it on that monitor. It's saying the hardware's changed. Well, it hasn't, not to my knowledge. Mic's working. So all the bits are coming out the right, out the correct. I can hear you, so the earphones are correct. The microphone is correct. Let me double check then in Audition. Why would it do that, I wonder? So look, hardware, audio, hardware, microphone. Yep. Well, nothing's changed, so. But let me just quickly do a quick test to make sure that.
Sure.
Oh, wait. It's detected a problem with the current hardware settings. Default input device appears connected but is not responding. Oh. Check your audio device and confirm device setting or select a different.
Well, it's clearly working. Oh, there's Chip. Chip says, "Good day, all."
Out. 200 settings. Cancel. Let's try that again. No, it's definitely not going to record. Now, why? Think. You can hear me. I can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, clearly the audio is working.
But this won't record on Audition for some reason, even though it's showing the microphone is being. No, that was on.
Have something else to record with?
Yeah, I'll have to.
Yeah, Audacity or something like that?
No, I don't have that, but I've got Windows Voice Recorder is what I use as an emergency.
Okay.
Let's see, Voice Recorder. Dum. Voice Recorder, there it is. I'm going to do a quick test. Is this recording? Testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing. 1, 2, 3. Hang on. That. Oh yeah, that worked.
Okay.
Fine.
Let's do that.
It's going to have to be this, I'm afraid. Yeah. Not ideal.
But better than nothing.
Yeah, I can't look at that later. I don't know why Audition is throwing up that error. So,
yeah. My mother used to say it's.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say my mother used to say it's better than a sharp stick in the eye.
Oh yeah. I won't argue with that. But it's what I didn't do today because we've been out most of the days. I've not been back long. Was restart the computer. It's been running for like 10 days. I've not turned it off in 10 days, so it's probably a good idea to restart it. But too late for that now. Anyway, at least this is working. So we've got voice recorder. Let me just pop that in that corner on that monitor. We've got StreamYard working here. You can hear me, and we can see each other.
Yep. I think we're good.
We are. And then, so I don't need my email anymore. So let me shut that down. I've got the running order on a separate file. Get rid of that. move him over here so I can see it. What else do I need to fiddle around with? We've got, wait, I need to make this window smaller. I can do that, move him over here. Yeah, that's good. Yep, move this guy over here. Good thing to have a big monitor. I was going to get one of those wraparound monitors, and I haven't got to that. I haven't got round to doing it. Okay. Oh, we're good.
All right. Good. You want to run through this real quick?
We should, shouldn't we? So
yeah. Okay. So you started off this month.
Yeah.
The only announcement is that the interview with Eric Schwartzman is up, unless you have something else.
No, I can talk about Eric. That was a good conversation we had, Eric.
I think that would be great if you spent a minute or two talking about that conversation.
Yeah.
Then I got the Polite Mail promo, and then my first story. This was I'm not quite sure why I saw this in my feeds, but I was fascinated. This is a Scientific American story. I think they republished it from Politico, but it was academic research. It was a literature review of how different organizations tried to get people to evacuate if there's fires coming or floods or what have you, and they found that fear was the best motivator. Balanced a little bit, but as I read the article, it occurred to me that there is definitely fodder there for communicators. I mean, you don't want to use fear to sell makeup or something, but get people vaccinated, for example. I can see it internally. If we don't change, what's going to happen? All right. So I just thought I'd run through that research.
Yep.
Not terribly long, but it was interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got this one that is totally one of those slap your forehead with your palm moments.
Yeah, yes, it is.
And, what were they thinking kind of reaction? And the other one is, who the hell signed off on this? Hope it wasn't.
I know. I hadn't heard this, but I read the pieces that you sent, and my God.
So there's a lot of media coverage on it. So I'm just going to do the summary from The Guardian on this particular story about this train company and the email they sent to all the employees. But I was interested not so much in what the predictability has been of the outrage expressed in public media. What do communicators think about this? So, well, the best person I have found with quite a lot of comments on her Twitter handle was Rachel, our friend Rachel Miller. So I'm going to quote liberally from some of the reactions in that Twitter thread. And there's not much to discuss about it other than we wring our virtual hands and think this stuff still goes on. It's amazing. And, you think, no, people, they do this. So as one commenter pointed out, they weren't the first. There's a great example. I think it's a Chicago Tribune in the US did something similar. So I'll reference that and ask listeners if they got any other examples, so we can create a kind of a list of these things there. But for the grace of God, go I look at this, Right. But it's a nice little story. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And my last story is another one of those, although it's got this is the one on Basecamp.
Yeah.
Another, what were they thinking? But different approach to that and a different outcome. Not a good outcome.
Drawn out too. Very drawn out as well. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So then I'm going to talk about BitClout, which I had not heard of until this article crossed my feed, but I read a bunch on it, and then I went ahead and invested $50 in Bitcoin that I spent to buy BitClout. And I've been posting there. In fact, I posted that we're going to be talking about it here. I have not gotten any traction. Nobody's responded yet, but I've been commenting on some other people's posts.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I've got a one sentence quote from Phil Gomes on his view of it, but when Adweek says, what was their headline? Why BitClout is the platform brands and marketers must watch. I figured this is my one long piece. This one's going to take a few minutes to get through.
Okay. All
right.
Great.
Then we got Dan. I have had a chance to listen to Dan.
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Okay, he's talking about Clubhouse is out with their Android version, and he talks a little bit more about social audio with Twitter Spaces and what Facebook is planning, their sort of pivot to audio in general.
Okay.
He's talking a little bit about video, the fact that YouTube has launched Shorts, which is their competitor to TikTok, and built-in captions on Instagram. And the fact that WordPress or Automatic has acquired Creative Commons search.
Got it.
So that's what he's talked about. And
Okay.
I can take 30 seconds and say that I've gotten the Android version of Clubhouse.
Sure. Yeah, you can do that. So why don't you do that after the segment where he's going to be before I start the next story?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. So the next story, then, this is probably going to be quite long as well. On the next era of work, huge topic. So I'm certainly not going to attempt to try and decode what everyone's saying about it. There's lots of reports. The Harvard Business Review one I thought was actually quite a good one, although it is almost academic in its approach. It's not a casual read, and there's loads of others. But this Wired piece I thought was very good indeed by including the comments of the bunch of folks they've got in the article. So that's what I'm going to focus on what these people are saying about the next era of work.
Okay.
The hybrid word is being used. You're going to hear hybrid workplace a lot in the coming months.
Yeah, Michael Klein debated somebody on video. I haven't had a chance to watch it, but
who is this?
Michael Harry Klein. Do you not know Mike Klein? He's in Iceland. He's an American. I don't remember where he was before. It might have been the Netherlands, but now he got married and lives in Iceland. But he's an internal communications thought leader, bright guy. So
okay, so I'm going to quote from a variety of people at some well-known companies, some others that aren't so well-known, with various points of view, and I think that's a kind of useful contribution to the debate. I've got some opinions, and maybe we'll talk about those, and you'll have some I expect at the end. But get ready for the next era of work. It's a good headline for this piece.
Yeah, it is. All right, then I'm talking about Basecamp. Okay. In the context of employee activism.
That's a good context.
I'm briefly going to talk about what happened at the Washingtonian. This is the Washington, D.C. based monthly print magazine where the CEO basically said, y'all have to come back to the office. And if you don't, we're going to change your classification from employee to contractor, and I won't be paying your benefits or contributing to a 401k or anything. And it was just a revolt.
Okay.
So I'll mention that in the context of this, but basically talking about employee activism. And, I think both this and what happened at Basecamp, they're both examples of of communicators needing to be counselors to the leaders of the organization on this kind of stuff.
Okay.
Get beyond the writing articles and sending out press releases, and
that's a good move.
Yep.
Okay. Good. And then my final one. Well, this I've been hearing a lot about. So I hear recently online and in conversation I have with people that people are getting ready to get back into traveling again. And I've seen a couple of posts on Facebook, particularly from friends saying, hey, I booked a flight next week, first time since 2019, I'm going on a plane, all that kind of talk. Then I saw this article. I tell you, some of the things that you need to really realize what's coming, what's changed since you last were on a plane is eye-opening, some of it. It's very US focused, but that's very relevant. Some of it will apply no matter where you are. So there's 12 examples in this piece. That's too many to talk about in the segment. So I've got 6 highlighted. We'll see how we are in time, but they're quite interesting. So we can have a chat about that as well.
Sounds good. And then in the outro, I have the next episode set for June 14th, if that works. I suppose I should have checked my calendar to see if I don't have anything on. So we'll record on Saturday the 12th.
Yep, that sounds good to me. Yep, it's good.
Okay. Sounds good. Then should we do this?
We should do this.
Okay.
Let me just. Okay, I haven't got my audio running yet, so the recorder. So let me get that.
All
so
right.
You do the old 3, 2, 1 in that case.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to episode 207 of For Immediate Release, the Hobson Holtz report for May 2021. This is Neville Hobson in Thatcham in England.
And I am Shel Holtz in Concord, California, and we are delighted to join you today to share some of the content that we've stumbled across over the last month, some interesting stories to report. Before we get there, though, I just want to alert you to the availability of an FIR interview. We've done a few of these now after a several-year break from FIR interviews. This is one, Neville, you and I both spoke with Eric Schwartzman about his new book, The Digital Pivot.
It was a great conversation. I mean, we've known Eric since 2005 at least, when we started FIR, and he was a reporter for us from LA. And I remember his catch line from Los Angeles, the entertainment capital of the world. Eric would give us great content that was relevant to the entertainment industry generally, and of course for many listeners that's kind of like a magical world. So Eric was great to be part of that. We've kept in touch with him over the years. I've not seen Eric for some time in the flesh, so it was great to catch up with him and hear about the book. I thought he was very well prepared for our conversation. He knew what he was talking about. And the book is a good read, I must admit. If you're looking to get some guidance and the basics on the big topic of digital marketing, this is a good book to get. So, as you said, the interview is now available. So head on out there, folks, and take a listen.
Yeah, the book is available too. So,
buy the book.
As you say, if you need that overview of the key elements of digital communication, this is the book to provide that to you. For today's Polite Mail promo, I thought I'd share a few of the reviews you can find online for this exceptional internal communications tool. There is no shortage of 5-star reviews, like the one that says the staff at Polite Mail is exceptionally helpful. They've created a product that allows you to develop templates, track analytics around your communications, and create a comms cadence that will benefit your organization. We use this to seed targeted, personalized communications as well as organization-wide communication campaigns. If you need a tool that can provide analytics and tracking and have a need to send on behalf of others, this is a great tool. I also like that each message sent appears to be sent to a single person. We have more than 500 recipients on an email, and it still looks like the sender sent a personal note to someone directly, not a large group. Here's another. The tool is easy to use and works well with Outlook. Saves updating a database of staff and customers if you have groups already set up in Outlook by your IT team. The perfect internal comms add-on for sure. Another reviewer likes the ease and simplicity that makes it powerful out of the box along with the add-ons. I will say, though, that the customer service above all else would make me recommend the product so far. And just one more. For the first time ever, I have more than gut instinct when it comes to the effectiveness of our internal emails. The data is easy to understand and helping us to be better communicators. With 7,000 employees in nearly 200 locations, we use email as a primary communications platform. Using Polite Mail, we have data that supports what we do, illustrates our impact, and guides us in making decisions to expand our reach. You could have experiences that could lead you to share a 5-star review one of these days. If you start off by getting more information on this amazing resource, you'll find that at politemail.com. And as always, we thank Polite Mail for their ongoing support For Immediate Release. It's not often we turn to a publication like Scientific American as a source for an FIR story, but I was just fascinated by research that was reported there on May 3rd. At the core of any communication effort is influence, right? You want your audience to take some kind of action. You're looking to move the needle somehow. There are a few instances of how important that is when a local government knows a major disaster is coming, say a wildfire or a hurricane. The decision gets made to order an evacuation, and inevitably there are people who decide they're going to stay home and ride out the storm or hope that the fire passes them by. Carol Freeman is a senior preparedness analyst at the Argonne National Laboratory's National Preparedness Analytics Center. And she led a team of researchers to analyze 127 studies of evacuation strategies, and they produced a 52-page review that was published by the Federal Emergency Management Administration, FEMA. And they found that the most effective way to achieve that goal of getting people to evacuate is fear. Bombard the public with images of raging wildfires and crashing waves. Warn that people who stay home will have no electricity, water, or emergency rescue. Remind everyone of the most recent disaster to hit their community and how miserable it was. Freeman says people want to see visual images of danger. They like to see the fire coming over the ridge before they take action. Now, I'm not suggesting that we put fear at the heart of every communication we do, but depending on the consequences of not achieving the outcome we're seeking and the nature of the issue, it's at least worth considering in some instances. Yeah, right now we're trying to get people vaccinated, and mainly we're appealing to them based on, hey, you need to do the right thing. Be part of the solution to the pandemic problem. Maybe fear would work here. Why not show them what might happen if they don't get vaccinated? Another finding from the research is that women are far more likely than men to evacuate or to take protective actions to shelter in place. People who see themselves as rugged individualists see warnings as overblown, and they embrace a stay and defend strategy. Knowing that, how would you go about changing their minds? Another one, people with pets are inclined to stay put because they don't want to lose their pets and maybe can't take them in the car. Poor people, low-income people who can't afford a hotel if they evacuate also are more inclined to stay. How do you use fear to get them out of danger? It's not just about scaring them, though. Freeman says raising their concern is fine, but it has to be married with their ability to control the danger. There's research that if you try to scare people too much, people are going to zone out. With COVID, that's easy. Getting the shot is the way to control the danger. Now, undoubtedly, PR practitioners will find other instances where building fear will be the most effective approach to that communication. And demonstrating the control you have will be easy because getting people to do that is the goal of the communication in the first place, right? Even in internal communications, say a wellness or a mental health program, convincing managers to take a more active role in the careers of their employees. Fear of what might happen if they don't could be effective when done right. Like I say, it would have limited uses in organizational communications, but there are times that I can see it working well.
Well, that's an interesting approach, I have to say. So if I understand it right, but I'm trying to visualize. So they've done research. This is basically saying to people, it's actually what it's doing is glancing through the story, where people delay, they dither with the decision whether they should or not. If they got kids, for instance, oh, I don't believe it, it's overblown. All those kinds of things are happening. So people die because they don't act quicker. So this is designed to literally shock you to such an extent that you will do it and therefore save more lives. So you will evacuate. You won't stop and argue. You won't say, no, I don't believe this is true. You something almost basic in the human psyche tells you, if I don't move now, I'm going to die, basically, is what they're going to be doing, right?
Right. You see the image of the fire coming over the ridge and you go, oh, you know what? Maybe I do need to get out of here.
Okay. So they could try that again in this coming summer when we're no doubt going to have lots of fires everywhere, I expect. So,
especially around here.
Especially around where you are. Yeah, that's an interesting one, Shel.
But I mean, look at organizational change. One of the things we do in organizational change is show people the vision of where we will get to if we're effective at implementing this change, right? We're going to cross this chasm from where we are, and isn't this great shiny place that we're going to a place you want to be part of? Well, maybe part of that communication is also, what is this place going to look like if we don't change, right? And that's sort of the fire coming over the ridge or the waters rising. We need to get out of here. We need to get over to that better place.
I'm wondering how that would work, or how to make people who refuse to be vaccinated get vaccinated. Does it also not come down to trust in the communicator, i.e., whoever is communicating this dire picture? How much you trust them? If it's government, maybe it's different in the US. I suspect it is, but here, your willingness to believe is pretty high right now. Yet there's a hardcore of people that won't do things like get the vaccine. And they tend to be motivated in their beliefs by many things, ranging from the obvious ones like religious conviction, or because of their culture, or whatever, where, well, nothing's worked in getting those people vaccinated. So would this approach work? I mean, is it like, if you don't get vaccinated, you will die in 3 days? I mean, I can't imagine anyone's going to believe that.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of this is tied to visual imagery, and there's been plenty of imagery of people in hospitals with, the breathing devices on. But I think that's been in news reports. I think in the public service announcements and the efforts to get people vaccinated, there hasn't been a lot of, this could be you in a week. I don't know how well it would work. This study was just about evacuations.
I get it. But it's kind of projecting out the fear factor. Right. It's something really, a real emergency, a health emergency, public health emergency. I don't think this would work. I mean, showing pictures of, hospital beds, you're seeing on the news, and they're horrible scenes. So they try here. I've seen quite a few posters when we've been out. So today, for instance, I have the notice on bus stops and things like this, showing someone who was distressed because a relative was in intensive care. And that was all about, when the call comes, get your jab. I mean, that's kind of subtle, I suppose. But I wonder how effective that sort of approach would be for something like this. I doubt it.
Well, I remember seeing an interview with a musician. This was somebody who was using heroin and had a very unhealthy lifestyle. And the doctor said, "You are going to die." And in the interview, he said, "That's a hell of a motivator, the fear of death." So, I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one. It's an interesting approach that they've done there, I have to say. Well, talking about interesting approaches, let's talk about an interesting approach to employee communication in the UK last week. There's a slap your forehead moment, folks. It's truly extraordinary that this kind of thing people still do this today. And it's hard to believe it. So what is this? Well, it's to do with a train company in the UK, in the West Midlands. That's in the centre of England, basically. It's called West Midlands Trains. And they emailed around 2,500 employees with a message saying that the managing director, a gentleman by the name of Julian Edwards, wanted to thank them for their hard work over the past year under COVID-19. The email said they would get a one-off payment as a thank you after a huge strain was placed upon a large number of our workforce, quote unquote. However, those who clicked through on the link to read Edwards's thank you were instead emailed back with a message telling them it was a company-designed phishing simulation test, and there was to be no bonus. It warned, this was a test designed by our IT team to entice you to click the link and use both the promise of thanks and financial reward. A West Midlands Train spokesman said, "We take cybersecurity very seriously. We run regular training and it's important to test your resilience." The design of the email was just the sort of thing a criminal organization would use, and thankfully it was an exercise without the consequences of a real attack. So we pause at this point and just digest these two things. One, the actual communication that took place, and the company's official spokesperson's statement in reaction to the criticism. Do you think there's anything missing in that, Shel? Do you think in that statement?
Yeah, I think it's astounding that I can't believe that a communicator was involved in this, that nobody checked to say, hey, communicator, what's going to happen if we do this? Is this going to work okay?
Right.
It just has mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling. And as you'd probably expect, the mainstream media have been full of this for a couple of days with statements of outrage from across industry, politics, commerce, the works, you name it. You've got government ministers talking about it. You've got trades unions were really up in arms about it, as you would expect. And people generally commenting on Facebook and so forth. Hey, did you hear the story about this, blah, blah. So I was interested. So what are our communication colleagues saying about this? I didn't see a huge amount of kind of, lengthy comment threads on Facebook or on LinkedIn about this thing. But I did find one when I thought, hang on, I know who's probably talking about this, Rachel Miller. Now, Rachel, who our listeners will know, used to run a podcast on the FIR Podcast Network. She now does another one that's actually quite good. But she had some good things to say that attracted a lot of comments to a Twitter thread. I'm going to quote some of these things. And I think we can now rest assured that at least the communicators have zeroed in on something on their comments, on their criticism. But Rachel's reaction to it in her main tweet, from which all the other comments are threaded, she says, "This is an extraordinary decision and use of internal communication. I'm struggling to see the empathy or compassion for employees' feelings coming through in any of the official responses from the company." Well, reactions from some people. Hal Reynolds said, "Wow, another organization shows traits associated with psychopathy. In this case, lack of empathy, irresponsibility, manipulativeness, and lack of remorse. I feel for the staff and the comms team who have to work in a culture that lets it happen. It's a kick in the guts." And then Alan Richardson says, "They weren't the first," with a link to a Chicago Tribune piece quoted by CBS News. They got an email dangling a bonus, but it was a hoax. So I haven't read the story, but there's a link to it in Rachel's Twitter thread, which that will be linked to in the show notes. You can take a look at that. So they weren't the first, says Alan. And others pile in. They really weigh in with some. Cal Monahan says, "This is awful. No one thinks cybersecurity isn't an important issue, but to test your colleagues this way is cynical, dishonest, and cold. Why do they feel the need to test, quote unquote, colleagues after the year they've just had? I'm speechless." Simon Thompson says, "It's grim, awful, and what attackers might do. I think it's justifiable on two conditions. That staff have recently had super clear training on the subject, and leaders have been tested first and held to account for their failings. There must, however, be better ways to do this." Well, you've got it there, mate. You've got it there. Nick Whitefield says, "I feel for the comms people who are either ignored or not experienced enough in the circumstances, if indeed they were involved at all. IT teams are often able to act without comms. It's a learning opportunity all round. I've worked in rail. It's generally a caring industry." Jenny Clark says, "I'd read this earlier and keep coming back to it. I can't imagine the conversations that did and didn't take place to allow this to actually happen. I mean, there are so many scenarios that could have been used to test colleagues. Who signed it off?" Well, that's a good question there, Jenny. I tell you that. Matt Hay, "Oh no, wow, that is poorly judged." I mean, there's a succinct comment right on the button with that one, I think. We have here a few others. Well, there's a lengthy thread, so I'm not going to read them all. But it's really quite extraordinary that this event actually happened. It's unclear from the thread, and I haven't seen any further comments about it, whether any communicators were actually involved in this or not. I don't know what to think myself, Shel, because the rail companies, and this must be one of the ones, have a good comms team. They've got a well-structured organizational communication process there. So communicators surely would have been involved. And there's the treading on dangerous ice here, because I'd be amazed to discover they were and just made a decision to do this. Maybe they were overruled by someone who'd have no idea of the details. A couple of other comments just briefly. These are good ones. Amy Murphy says, "Ew, this is so disappointing." That's a good one. Vanessa Norton says, "Wow, just wow." Helen Deverell, "Just terrible." Simon Monger says this shows a staggering tone deafness. I can't even begin to imagine the thought process that led them to think this was a good idea and to stand by it afterwards. That's actually a pretty good concluding comment to this, I think. So it's attracted all of that. I'm sure the places like PR Week, I've not seen anything there. The Institute of Personnel Development had a statement about it, but it was the same as what the mainstream media has been criticizing. So nevertheless, this will be bookmarked, I'm sure, by lots of people to point out this is how not to do it.
Yeah, I would love to look up the core values of that rail organization and see how this action aligns with those values. It demonstrates a tremendous amount of disrespect for employees. And if they're making any efforts at all to elevate the level of engagement in the organization or to deliver a great employee experience, they've just taken a massive step in the wrong direction for both engagement and experience. Would you trust anything you read from them for a while? It's mind-boggling. And in terms of communicators being brought into a decision like this, I have to say I've encountered IT departments that just do this sort of thing. They don't recognize that there's an employee communication component to it.
No, I have too, but the last time I did must have been like 1998. I can't imagine that it hasn't changed since then, surely. Anyway, thanks, Rachel, for the tweet that stimulated that input from lots of communicators in the UK. That was really useful.
Yeah. A story crossed my feeds the other day that ended up leading me down a rabbit hole. The headline reads, "Why BitClout is the platform brands and marketers must watch." My first reaction was, the hell is BitClout? So I was intrigued, even more so when I read that BitClout is described as a social network, but also a social crypto. It's a coin for celebrities or a social currency for influencers. The piece ran in Adweek. The author was Rebecca Batterman, and she says it is a new social economy that lets users buy and sell tokens based on people's reputations. It is a new social network. Its lead creator, who goes by the moniker Diamond Hands, says the core insight behind BitClout is that if you can mix speculation and content together, you can not only get a 10-buy product that creates innovative ways for creators to monetize, but you also get a new business model that's not ad-driven anymore. So, the idea that there's no ads in this social network is appealing to a lot of people. There's no actual company behind this. According to an article on CoinDesk, it's a proof-of-work blockchain designed for running social media created by an anonymous group of developers. There's a token associated with it. It's all caps BTCLT, BitClout. It generates social tokens which represent actual people controlled by automated market makers. You buy BitClout with Bitcoin, though there's no way to sell your BitClout once you've got it. As one expert said, you can put money in, but you can't get it out, at least not yet. A ton of investors, though, have sunk money into BitClout, including Sequoia, Andreessen Horowitz, Winklevoss Capital, and others. I read somewhere that something like 165 billion has been invested in this so far. The dedicated blockchain that they created for this is designed to hold the text of social media posts, and they're planning to open source the code behind it so other people could create this. And because they're counting on big name influencers participating, they've reserved a lot of names. I saw Ariana Grande as a reserved account, for example. Batterman, the author of the Adweek article, says that BitClout is undeniably a moment for creators, but it's a bigger moment for brands to carve out their relationship with creators. She shares 4 reasons BitClout is the platform for brands and marketers to watch. First, coin creation isn't limited to influencers. If you create value, any value to anyone, which we all do, you may consider making yourself a BitClout coin. If you have creatives as clients, consider working with them to create their coin. It gives you direct access to influencers and their built-in communities. Creator coins aren't just limited to your name. You could set them up as crowdfunding alternatives, popular icons, or a charity, for example, Marketers can use it to trend spot and to tie back to client brands. She points out that there is a coin on BitClout called Kelp, K-E-L-P. It's held by a woman named Courtney Boyd Myers. She is the founder and CEO of a company that makes snacks and burgers out of sea kelp. And with the rise of plant-based foods, some may feel inclined to back kelp, seeing it as an emerging future of food trend. And as the coin value increases, marketers can tap right into that trend. And finally, there's cross-platform integration, because on BitClout, you can share TikTok links through your posts, which could lead to a surge of Gen Z users signing on to the network. Now, there is a fair amount of skepticism out there. The one article says, if it's a scam, it's a very well done one. I asked Phil Gomes, our resident blockchain expert, and his reply was, as it is highly unlikely that Kim Kardashian, Elon Musk, or Justin Bieber are in any way officially affiliated with this project, as the casual visitor is led to believe, I can't recommend that brands take BitClout at all seriously. That said, I do think crypto has strong potential for influencer marketing, NFTs, for example, but this ain't it. And I did, by the way, see somebody pitching his NFTs of a baseball card of himself on BitClout. And it's getting a ton of press. And as for Elon Musk, he has nearly 14,000 followers on BitClout, and his coin price is currently worth more than $67,000. I was curious enough to give it a try, so I bought $50 worth of Bitcoin and spent most of it buying BitClout. The social network looks a lot like Twitter, and people are engaging in conversations a lot like they do on Twitter. Right now, most of the conversation, not surprisingly, is about BitClout rather than other stuff, but there are nuggets out there of other conversations, and it's new, and other social networks have had that same experience where the initial conversation is about the platform. I confess I'm not 100% clear on how all of this works, but a lot of people on the network are. I'm going to keep studying it, and next month I'll follow up and let you know what I figured out.
Yeah, I'd not heard of it until I knew you were doing this story. I did read the article in Bitcoinist, the one that has the headline saying, "Is BitClout a scam or is it the next big thing?" I seem to remember that about Clubhouse and about some of the cryptocurrencies too. Is it real, or is it the next big scam, or is it the next big thing? But it's interesting. It has a pro and a con: the case for it being a scam and the case for it being the real deal. The case of being a scam is interesting. Some of the things in there, because I can imagine the nervousness some of these things would cause. For instance, the only way to participate is exchanging Bitcoin for their own token, and with that token you buy creator coins. Now your money is buried 2 levels deep into BitClout's ecosystem, and you can't get it out. No cryptocurrency exchange supports any of these coins. It was brand new, right?
Right.
In fact, it says there's no way to change the tokens back into Bitcoin. Big red flag, it says. Okay. So, and indeed, the last comment is quite an interesting one from the Cozy Alchemist. I guess it's a guy who knows a bit about this kind of stuff. He says, I just realized that BitClout is a proof of work blockchain, yet they haven't open sourced the software. So they're literally pre-mining block rewards to LMAO. I like that. Okay. So the case of BitClout being the real deal is interesting too. The names backing it. So you've mentioned some of them: Andreessen Horowitz, Sequoia Social Capital, high-profile crypto investors, Digital Currency Group, and the Winklevoss twins. In which case, what could go wrong with all of that group in there? The project's code will be released on GitHub, proving it's open source. Well, that would if they did release it on GitHub. They've got a public exchange listing API, waiting for exchanges to list them. So, and they've done charitable work. So there's a balance there. But like you, I would say this is for early stage investors, people who like to be really in at the bleeding edge, and it could be the next big thing. Who knows? So we'll see, won't we?
Yeah, what I like about the concept, if not necessarily this platform, is that instead of advertising supporting this, it's all about investment. If you find somebody's commentary valuable, you invest in their personal coin. And the better your content is, the more you can earn. And if this is legit, and I was willing to invest $50 in the off chance that it's not, uh, then you could actually earn money based on people finding your content of value. So I find the concept interesting. It's not the first one. We were talking about what's it called, Steam, a couple of years ago. But this one, with its Twitter type of interface, is very clean. It's very simple. I think it's got potential. I'm not thoroughly skeptical. I'm interested. So I'm gonna keep looking at it and see where it goes.
Okay, so you keep an eye on it for us.
Okay.
Yep.
So that's Dan. And I'm going to say a word or two about Dan.
Okay.
By the way, Chip says, just call it crypto and it gets attention these days.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
No, he's not. Well, thanks, Dan. Great report. I have to say that I got the Android version of Clubhouse, and I have been using it pretty much exclusively because my iPhone is just my work phone. I had an interesting experience, though. What happened was I had Clubhouse on my phone, and I needed to get a new phone. So I went through work and said, my phone is not holding a charge more than 20 or 30 minutes. It's a 3-year-old iPhone. And they sent me a new one, and I followed all the instructions, wiped the old phone clean, and couldn't get back into Clubhouse because, as far as they were concerned, it was still open. I hadn't gone in and logged out before I wiped the phone clean. So I had to set up a new account. And now I get the Android version. I type in my phone number, and lo and behold, I'm back into the original account. So I now have 2 Clubhouse accounts, one on my Android, which is Shel Holtz, and one on the iPhone, which is Shel_Holtz. So if I ever want to adopt a different approach to the conversations I'm engaged in, I suppose I could switch phones. But I am glad it's available on Android.
Cool. I'm not paying much attention to Clubhouse, I have to tell you. But Twitter Spaces, I like. I've participated in a handful of conversations on Twitter Spaces. I've got nothing to compare it with. Is it better than Clubhouse? I have no idea. But I've enjoyed the experiences I've had there. But I see people talking a lot more still about the bad actors you encounter or you hear about. And that's I guess that if you're comfortable with that environment, that's fine. I certainly wouldn't suggest to any company I'm working with to venture into those places until you're clear what you're going to do there. This is not for experimenting, I don't believe so.
Yeah, no,
you'll keep an eye on it for us on FIR. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and I also was interested in the YouTube Shorts to try to take on TikTok. I don't think anybody's going to be able to take on TikTok for a while. It's just a monster.
Right. Okay. So, speaking of monsters, we got a monster topic here to talk about, the next era of work. Something we hear a lot about as countries start emerging from the coronavirus pandemic. Particularly developed economies getting back to business. Here in the UK, lockdowns are being lifted in the 4 constituent parts of the UK: England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, and other countries too are beginning to open up as vaccination programs continue. So you can see, if you look around, any number of articles that talk about what's going to happen after the pandemic. Are we all going to go back to work, back to the office? Will we still be working from home? And there's quite a lot of intelligent narratives out there, a lot of good opinions and so forth, but there's a lot of it. One of the best articles I read recently was a report in the Harvard Business Review, but it's more of an academic look at it. I thought when I read it, it's not an easy short read. But Wired UK has a very interesting piece, which is the focus of what I want to talk about today, on the topic. And the headline was a perfect one: "Get ready for the next era of work." So I think there's 2 words that we need to pay attention to here: is hybrid workplace. And that's something you're going to hear a lot about. Hybrid, not to do with electrically powered gasoline engine cars. No, that's a different hybrid. But it's the same principle. It's a combination of a number of things. And the question really isn't about will there be a hybrid workplace. It's more about how do we implement it? How do we put it in place and make it actually work? So what attracted me to Wired's piece as a topic to talk about in this podcast is the fact that it isn't just a piece of opinion. It actually includes opinions from people working in companies who are addressing this very issue. So I'm going to quote a lot of those people's comments as opposed to just a narrative. So to introduce it, set the scene on what Wired says, which I don't disagree with this. While most of us have a reasonably clear view on what we want to happen next, we are not all looking for the same thing. This presents the world's employers with a sizable challenge. Now that lockdown's lifting in many countries, leaders are left balancing corporate needs around culture building and collaboration with the individual needs of the employee, namely the flexibility and work-life balance they've enjoyed while working remotely. More than 40% of workers would take a lower paid job if they were guaranteed a hybrid working model. That's according to Return to the Workplace, a report published in March by the office automation firm Envoy. And they've got a pretty good executive summary on that you can download for free. I may reference that later because there's a few other interesting facts in there. A recent survey in the UK from Capita found that over 40% of senior decision makers are now planning on shifting to a hybrid setup in 2021, with a quarter offering a permanent work from home solution. The implications of this are vast, says Wired. This is not just about where we work. Employers need to be rethinking benefits, support systems, how they manage performance and progression, how their leaders engage with the workforce, and even the very role of the workplace itself. So what do business leaders have to say? Well, there's a great selection I'm going to quote from that Wired has gathered. It starts with one from Natasha Bernal, who's Wired's business editor. She says, if you've just started a new job or at the early stages of your career, you probably want to be in the office to learn from others. Those who have been in the workforce for longer and typically already have a network of contacts are perfectly prepared to work independently. This scenario could see the office being filled with junior members of staff with few senior people to guide them, to pass on knowledge or to share skills. Stefan Bachmann, who's the director of talent acquisition at Cisco, has an interesting perspective. He says, some of us can't wait to feed off that office energy. Others just can't see themselves going onto a congested tube, that's the subway system here, eating at their desk while socially distanced, perhaps not knowing if the person next to them has been vaccinated. Kelly Singleton, HR Director for Global Tech at Barclays Bank, says it's important to work with colleagues to find out what they want and then marry this up with the needs of the business. She also flags a very real problem that many businesses are now grappling with. Hybrid working needs to work for both the business and for colleagues, but it's much easier said than done. Eva Ducroisset, Chief People Officer at Go Cardless, she says, we're going for a model that's left up to the team, as that's the unit that will make us successful. These teams don't always map to reporting lines. This is more related to what projects people work on together. She adds that this approach will enable solutions that offer individual flexibility as far as possible, while ensuring alignment from teams that regularly work together. Catalina Schwenninger, Chief People Officer at FutureLearn, says whatever approach is adopted, most employees just want to know the plan so that they can plan their days and lives. What we're hearing from our staff is the need for clarity. Will I be at a disadvantage if I move away and I'm not able to show up in the office every week, for example? There is an increased expectation around the openness and transparency of the ground rules. Ranjit D'Souza, president of Lee Hecht Harrison, says the office still has a very important function. It plays a role of ensuring that you create culture, collaboration, and community. These are things which definitely cannot be replicated in a remote working environment. The pandemic didn't just send the workforce home, it redefined the very idea of the workplace. Whatever the next era of work brings, most agree that a central workplace itself still has a role to play in helping employees to develop networks and build their social currency at work. Eva de Kreutzer again, Chief People Officer at Go Cardless, she says when people think about going back to the office, their reference point is how the office used to be. But the pandemic has given employers an opportunity to disrupt old ways of thinking and approach the workplace from a new angle. viewing it as a product that is strategically designed, managed, and evolved. I don't think we'll ever say, this is how the office works ever again. I think it will be a constantly evolving concept. For de Kreutzert, the workplace is wherever people are doing work in a way that's going to enable the success of the company and its ability to deliver its long-term strategy. And that could be anywhere, be it the employee's home, the office, or a coffee shop. It's about designing a workplace that will facilitate that, she says. Kelly Singleton says Barclays is redesigning its campuses. So if staff do come in, it's a valuable experience. It's giving colleagues a curated experience when they're on site, she says. Not just so it's better for when they're here, but in order to turn the workplace into a more collaborative place. And Carl Benedict Frey, who's the Director of Future of Work at Oxford Martin School, says being at work is really important on building up management capital. And that's quite important when it comes to promotion. Employers need to be aware of the often unconscious proximity bias towards staff who are in the office, something that has the potential to cause long-term issues. We've seen that women who are carers or who have young children are less likely to go into the office than single men, for instance. That can translate into different promotion rights, and then you have a real diversity problem. Wired concludes its piece by saying there will be challenges ahead in balancing individual needs and preferences with those of their organization and their immediate teams. But we will see a far greater proportion of organizations finally looking to offer long-term solutions that work for both businesses and the individuals. For employers, a more decentralized workforce will mean access to new and more diverse pools of talent, as many employers are no longer limited to geographical distance. For employees, there is a prospect of much sought-after work-life balance, workplaces that better meet their needs, and the ability to make career choices uninhibited by the necessity to be near to the office. So there you've got a collection of a handful of people who are grappling with this whole issue now of what to do with the workplace, with some pretty disparate, very different opinions and views. But I think there's a commonality amongst all those examples in the Wired piece that is all to do with preparing for the change that is upon us, not that's coming in 6 months or a year or two. As we begin to get back to a sense of how things were, meaning traveling to an office, maybe not all the time. But there's got to be something that gels and knits together the two into this hybrid that I keep hearing about. So what these folks are grappling are steps along the way on that. What do you think about all of that, Shel?
I think that it is ridiculous that anybody thinks that when the pandemic ends, they're going to, employers are going to develop the new model that is going to satisfy everybody from the get-go. This is going to be an evolution. It's going to work out over a long period of time. There's going to be experimentation, see what works and what doesn't, and you're going to see policies evolve. This is going to be a decade-long process, I think.
I get that totally from what these folks are saying. This is a long process. Nothing happens quickly here.
Yeah, I think that people have different expectations based on their own circumstances. And I mean, I know people who can't wait to get back to work simply because and I think we've talked about this before, they don't have a space to work at home. There's no extra room to serve as the office. So they're at the kitchen table where the kids are running around. They can't wait to get back to their office or even their cubicle. I know companies that are talking about reconfiguring their offices so that it is configured for social activities, for meetings, for social activities, not for you to sit in your office with your head down in front of your computer and work, which you could do just as well at home, which does not accommodate those people who are stuck working in their kitchens where the kids are running around. So I think there are a lot of assumptions that people are making that need to be tested. I would go into this slowly. I would do an awful lot of listening. There are issues with people working remotely all of the time. I've read a number of articles about how culture deteriorates under those circumstances. And there are so many different variables and moving pieces in this that the idea that somebody's going to post a model and everybody's going to say, oh, that's it, 3 days at work and 2 at home every week. It's just not going to happen that way. No, look how long it's taken us to
Yeah, I can't imagine anyone doing that, to be honest.
Yeah, look how long it's taken us to get to the model that we had before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, cubicle farms weren't around 50 years ago.
No.
So,
well, it's like I said, the piece certainly to me is very clear that this is you're hearing different experiences of people. No one's actually saying, yeah, we want the employees back 2 days a week, and no one's got to that at all. But here's something interesting I found. I mentioned this Envoy study. This Return of the Workplace report was a survey of 1,000 workers in the US. So it's 1,000 people. But strong business case for hybrid work. And it starts by saying the workplace is here to stay. Now, no one's disagreeing with that. And your scenario, by the way, I know a number of people with that. They're sitting in the kitchen with a laptop, it's a nightmare, can't wait to get back to the office. But that's how they started out. They figured, I'm going to do this, I have to, then I'm going to get back to the office. Equal numbers of people I know are saying, thank God I don't have to go to the office. So they can handle working from a dining room table, but most people I know have either themselves invested in office equipment or their employer has paid for things like a desk, pays the broadband, all those kinds of things. So all that's been going on already with many, many people. But this one's interesting, though. There's a demand for hybrid work across age, industry, and company size. Nearly half of the respondents to the survey, 48%, say they want the flexibility to work remotely during some of the work week. Here are some other employee demographics. So they talk about 61% of office workers call for a hybrid model. 52% of Gen Zers call for a hybrid model. 46% of millennials. So there's a few others there too. Employees say some work is better suited for a collaborative environment. When asked what influences their decision to go to the workplace, top factors include what they need to get done for work, 39%. Who else plans to be at the workplace that day, 37%. So there's lots more in that report. Worth a read, though. So, like you said, this is a very fluid thing. There is no model. And the worst thing I've seen, by the way, is some of our fellow colleagues in our profession, let's say, saying this is what you need to do in a kind of general way, which doesn't really work, I don't think. But people are looking for guidance. Hence why you've got so many people with reports coming out and stuff like that. The Harvard Business Review report is worth a read. Bamboo HR has some good stuff, and a lot of companies use Bamboo HR. And so, to me, the value of hearing what others are doing is, well, what are they doing that I can learn from? Could that work for me? And that, to me, is a benefit.
I want to share what Chip Griffin thinks, because he's watching us as we record, and he has shared some thoughts. He said hybrid will meet resistance from both directions, those who want to work remote full-time and those who want to be in the office only. The focus tends to be on workers wanting to be all or mostly remote, but there's not a significant population but there's not an insignificant population that doesn't want that. This is definitely going to be a knotty problem for employers in the years ahead. Laws will need to be updated to handle hybrid work too. Right now, tax implications of people working remotely in a state other than their office can be costly. If that becomes more common, tax law needs to be rationalized to allow employers to give flexibility to employees without undue burden.
Yeah, well, quite. That's the kind of stuff people are thinking about already, because no one, I can't imagine anyone is thinking like, yeah, we're moving to a hybrid model. Full stop. That's it. Yep. You come and work or not, whatever. This report that I quoted from talks a lot about a lot of the things employers need to change and consider if they go for a hybrid model. But I've seen 3 surveys in the last 3 months that all of them say that hybrid workplace is the way things are moving. And I can't imagine that people aren't thinking about the stuff that Chip just mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. That's the way things are moving. There's no question for employees who can do that sort of thing.
Not everyone can, but the ones who can.
Yeah, if you work in an electrical transmission station, I don't think you can do that from home. If you're, in my industry, if you can't build a building from another state, right?
Yeah.
So,
but I don't think anyone would say to an electrician, you got to work hybrid. I can't imagine they're going to say that, right? So how do they deal with that? Again, that's the issue. If you've got a workforce that some are office-based, IT people or use computers all the times, and others are in a factory, how do you deal with that? Well, yeah, obviously you can't make factory workers work from home. No one's even thinking of doing that. But how do you knit together dispersion. That's one of the biggest challenges. And this report references that.
Right. And Chip adds, small employers are not nearly aware enough of the issues they need to consider. I think that's probably exactly right.
Well, there's a need for some communication in that case.
Right. Well, what happened a couple of weeks ago at the company Basecamp is a good reason for us to revisit employee activism. Basecamp, if you're not familiar with it, is a project management tool that's been around for a long time. The International Association of Business Communicators uses it to coordinate gold quill judging, the annual awards competition, and world conference speakers, for example. In late April, the company's CEO shared a blog post that said he was banning societal and political discussions on internal forums. And the company's co-founder said that Basecamp would pay generous severance packages to anyone who disagreed with this. People got upset. So the CEO convened his staff on a Zoom meeting to apologize for the post. Reports say the conversation that ensued left some employees in tears. Half an hour after the meeting ended, the CEO announced that the company's longtime head of strategy had been suspended and placed under investigation after he said something racially charged. And the next weekend, that head of strategy resigned. But within a few hours of the meeting, at least 20 people, that's about a third of the company's 57 employees, took them up on the severance offer, including some senior staffers like the head of marketing, the head of design, and the head of customer support. Most folks said that these changes were the reason that they were leaving. One employee said, "My honest sense of why everybody is leaving is because they're tired of Jason and David's behavior. The suppression of voices of any dissent. They really don't care what employees have to say. If they don't think it's an issue, it's not an issue. If they don't experience it, then it's not real." And this was the final straw for a lot of employees. Now, there was more to the original blog post than societal and political discussions. They explained that Basecamp was going to do away with paternalistic benefits, committees, and would prohibit lingering or dwelling on past decisions. But reports say it was the societal and political discussions bit that riled people up the most. Here's what he wrote about that in the blog post. "Today's social and political waters are especially choppy. Sensitivities are at 11, and every discussion remotely related to politics, advocacy, or society at large quickly spins away from pleasant. You shouldn't have to wonder if staying out of it means you're complicit or wading into it means you're a target. These are difficult enough waters to navigate in life, but significantly more so at work. It's become too much. It's a major distraction. It saps our energy and redirects our dialogue toward dark places. It's not healthy. It hasn't served us well, and we're done with it on our company Basecamp account where the work happens. People can take the conversations with willing coworkers to Signal, WhatsApp, or even a personal Basecamp account, but it can't happen where the work happens anymore." Anyway, I suggest you read the articles that we link to in the show notes about all the gory details. It's better than a soap opera. But the point here is that as communicators, we need to counsel the leaders of our companies on these kinds of issues, like how political should you let your staff be? Should the company allow political discussions on its internal networks? Now, I read a piece on a blog called Know Your Team, the author of which admits that it's tempting to shut down political discussions, but says rarely does shutting down of energy result in the relieving experience of a release of energy. Stifled feels stifled. Saying don't talk about this doesn't lighten the load, it increases it. While uncomfortable and arduous, it is possible for leaders to hold space for civil political discourse in their own team. Yes, it takes effort, and yes, outcomes may vary depending on your context. But the reality is that there is no other reality. Political events and ideas affect the day-to-day lives of our team members and our customers, whether that experience for you or them is pleasant or not. This is a really intriguing post, and the link to that is in the show notes as well. Now, the exodus from Basecamp isn't the only bit of employee activism in the news. There's a magazine called The Washingtonian. It's a monthly print magazine out of D.C. And the staffers rose up in protest over the CEO's opposition to, and this will take us right back to the last story, remote work and the pronouncement that those who wouldn't come back to the office would be reclassified as contractors, losing the benefits they get as employees. The CEO's message on this was pretty snarky, talking about it's going to save me in office space too. The outrage from the employees led her to walk back the remarks in an internal memo, but the damage was already done. One thing to keep in mind here, whether you agree with the employees who acted in these cases or not, is that the reputations of both organizations have been affected by this. Again, it's an opportunity for communicators to sort of step back from writing press releases and producing articles for the internet and counsel leadership on how to address these kinds of issues in order to achieve the best possible outcome. Look, things are already different. Employees aren't the compliant worker bees they used to be, and leaders and communicators are going to have to get used to it and figure out how to thrive with the way things are now.
Well, it's quite a tale, the Basecamp thing. I did read this piece in The Guardian about a week ago. A great headline: "The meltdown at Basecamp shows even small tech firms are sociopathic." And his subhead, this is John Norton, who's a columnist. His subhead is: "A culture war between founders and employees at the software firm is a reminder that new industries aren't any more caring than old." It's an interesting viewpoint. He says, although Basecamp is a minnow in the world of tech giants, what happened there reflects what is already commonplace in its bigger counterparts. This is because at Base, the company's internal dissension highlighted that the conflict was actually between the sociopathic imperatives of the corporation and the feelings of skilled employees concerned about the racism and sexism that is endemic in both US society and in an industry that for decades pretended that it was above such sordid concerns. Pretty scathing assessment, I thought.
Pretty accurate based on everything else that I've read. And I've read maybe 8 or 9 stories on this situation.
Yeah. I don't know, what's the latest? I mean, are they still in business, or are they out of business now, basically?
They're still in business, but it's got to be struggling based on the defection of, well, it's not really a defection. They didn't leave for a competitor. They just left. The exodus of people, especially senior staff. I mean, when your head of customer support leaves, you got a problem. When your head of marketing leaves, you've got a problem.
Wow, quite extraordinary. Okay. All right, so talking about work leads me to our last story, because this is related to travel, not just work travel, I would hasten to add, but I've been seeing people I know commenting on various social networks, LinkedIn, one in particular, about the fact that booking flights, going to see customers or meeting colleagues, first time since 2019 in many, many cases. I've not been on a plane since December 2019. I don't miss it at all, I have to admit. But this story is kind of a bit eyebrow raising in some ways, but it's worth thinking about some of the points raised in this piece by the Points guy. Very US focused, but that's relevant. And indeed, much of it, though, would apply in other countries, notably in Europe, perhaps, I would argue. But it starts off, the headline is what grabbed me in the RSS feed, Shel. Prepare yourself, it says. 12 unexpected but significant ways travel has changed. It talks about, if you've been traveling, you already know how shocking it has been and how quickly crowds have returned to airports, planes, hotels, tourist attractions, and restaurants. And don't even get us started on rental cars, they say. Oh, yeah, there's some big comments about rental cars here. A lot has changed out there in the world of travel. So here are a few of the things that may shock you when you begin traveling again. And many, many people are starting on that. There's 12, like the headline says, but I'm not going to go through all 12. Just a couple of them that struck me as kind of, wow, I didn't know that. First one that's worth mentioning, print everything. This age of digital we've got our phones and our tablets, our laptops. We don't need to print out stuff. Today, traveling, this is your backup. Print everything. Particularly COVID-19 test results and vaccine information, says Nathan Richardson, who's described as an executive VP, one of the people interviewed for this piece, for his experiences. Airlines are all requiring different forms, so check ahead. American Airlines from Miami to Jamaica, he says, did not allow anyone to go with an electronic boarding pass. You had to go show printed out documents before boarding. It was the same with Silver Airways out of Fort Lauderdale to North Eleuthera Airport in the Bahamas. They required you show the Bahamas travel health visa. Stuff to be concerned about, I would say. Expect schedule changes. This one is equally interesting. That quotes Summer Hull, an editorial director. When I used to fly regularly between Houston to New York City, I could sometimes get a wide-bodied plane equipped for international travel if I timed it correctly. At a minimum, I get a 737-sized plane. But now, many of the flights that are on the reduced schedule are regional jets, which isn't my ideal mode of travel for a 3.5-hour flight between two major cities. Interesting point that. No more big planes in some of these routes. I've glossed over some of the interesting ones that might appeal to people, like lounge chairs may be unavailable by the pool when you go to some holiday resorts, stuff like that. But here's another one. Rental cars are in short supply. And there's a good 5 articles in here about rental cars. This is from Victoria Walker, who's a senior writer. What was a shocker was how difficult it was to get a rental car during a recent trip to Norfolk, Virginia. It seemed like virtually everyone who landed at the airport that day was also in need of a car. I stood in line with dozens of other frustrated travelers for over an hour and even ran into an old high school friend who was also in line for a car. I was lucky to get a vehicle, an SUV instead of my chosen Mustang. But I also noted that the agent didn't even upsell me on typical add-ons like rental insurance, GPS, or an electronic transponder. The agent just handed me my keys and told me where to pick up the car. I think that's indicative of the car rental shortage more than anything else. A few other ones. Airplanes and hotels are crowded. I've been shocked at the difference a few weeks has made in the travel recovery. I was in Kauai back in January. I think it's in Hawaii, Shel. Is that where you think it is too?
Kauai, yes.
Kauai.
Kauai.
Yeah. And planes, airports, and hotels were still empty. When I flew back to Hawaii last month, I figured because of the extensive hoops travelers have to jump through that it would still be fairly uncrowded. Boy, was I wrong. It was like a travel light switch had been flipped. My flights to Kona were full. The airport in Seattle was mobbed. Hawaii itself was crowded with tourists again. In fact, the line to check into my hotel in Honolulu was more than 45 minutes, and that was the elite line. My flights back home were also crowded. It definitely feels like people are making up for lost time. They're booking again, at least domestically. Rental cars lines are long. Did we mention rental cars already? Well, here's this. When I landed in Houston, Orlando, and Miami over the past few months, the one constant has been rental car lines for every single company snaking around the respective ground transportation areas. Without rental car status that lets me skip the line, I would have had to adjust my plans by a few hours. Not all too surprising based on the rental car prices I've looked at before each trip. $500 for a weekend compact in Houston. Travel is back, says Richard Kerr, a director of travel partnerships. The days of spontaneous trips are behind us. Before the pandemic, I was really big on last-minute spontaneous travel, but those days of booking a last-minute flight or hotel room seem to be over, at least for now. I've booked multiple trips to the Catskills region of New York this year, for example, and have found hotels and inns with little to no availability and expensive rates, even though some of the on-site amenities are unavailable. That's Melanie Lieberman, senior travel editor. And there's another 5 of these things here. So think about this. It covers some of the typical stuff that you would think about when making trips that I haven't mentioned. Things like planning ahead, expect schedule changes, plan for crowded security, mask wearing's a mess, the data, and the other ones I've read out. So worth reading this article if you wanted to get up to speed with what the experiences of some show to expect when you get back on business flights again.
Wow. I haven't been on a flight in 13 months, and I have to admit I don't miss it, considering there were a few years there where I was on the road literally half the year.
You were.
And one of the reasons that I went back onto the client side was flying back and forth to the Philippines every 6 to 8 weeks was just really bad wear and tear on me. So I don't miss it. But, eventually going to get back on a plane again. We drove from San Francisco to San Diego for my granddaughter's 5th birthday party. That's like an 11-hour drive each way. The hotel issue we didn't encounter because we used Airbnb, which I think might benefit from the issue with the hotels. But eventually I'm going to have to get back on a plane, and it's important to pay attention to these things, especially printing everything out, which I've always done, by the way. I've always backed everything up with print. I put it in a file folder. I put it in my backpack. I use my phone, but what if my battery is dead? What if
Right,
I lose my phone? So even before all of this, I found value. At least it made me feel better to know that I had it all backed up in print.
I used to do the
So,
same, Shell. Absolutely
yeah.
right. But one thing happening in Europe is in the wider Europe, the continental Europe in particular, is a move by some countries' governments to literally say to airlines, if you have a flight that's less than 2 hours, stop it because we're going to make people go on trains. And the driver for that is largely to do with climate change and carbon emissions and all that. But with some of the super high speed trains that you can find in France, Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and some other countries, um, they're very pleasant experiences, and they go 300 kilometers an hour. I mean, these things are rockets that travel that way. So they compete with airlines, and the benefit being, particularly like a city like, let's say, Paris, it takes you right into the city centre, not an airport that's like 50 miles away. So I can see that becoming more and more a thing. Airlines are in deep financial dilemma, most of them. British Airways, I read the other day, is doing like a £6 billion loss for the last financial year. And you wonder how on earth they're going to survive. And you think about, everyone knows about, I think it's Arizona, is it not, Shell, where there's all these old aircraft parked. There's now an aircraft parking
Yeah, it's
lot
out
in
near
Belgium.
Tucson.
Right, in Belgium, with all the Airbus A380s, all the old 747s, and no one's flying anymore, and there's hundreds of them. And so, it's the whole of the travel business is in great flux right now. So expect more change. And if you need to travel on business, you've got to deal with all the stuff that the points guy talks about.
Yeah, personally, I love train travel. There's a romance to train travel. We're supposed to be getting high-speed rail between San Francisco and Los Angeles. It's been tied up in all kinds of litigation and other issues for 12, 13 years. But I would use it in a heartbeat over a plane. Maybe one day, but I doubt in my lifetime, frankly.
Okay, well, don't hold your breath then.
No, I won't. Hey, before we go, I just want to point out that the BBC is reporting, the headline says, TikTok, how the Israeli-Palestinian conflict plays out on social media. And the lead to this article says, once known as primarily for viral dance trends, the video app has become a key platform for sharing news. The Chinese-owned site has a vast, mostly younger audience with an estimated 700 million active monthly users worldwide. Footage of rocket fire over Israel, destruction in Gaza, and Palestinian protests have all gone viral on the site. It has brought the conflict to people's phone screens around the world. So, we might talk about YouTube Shorts trying to take on TikTok, but TikTok has now become kind of like Twitter, a means of people sharing news, and they are concerned about misinformation over this platform that used to be used for lip syncing.
Yeah,
so
it's actually interesting that, because one thing I've been paying attention to in the current conflict in the Middle East, I don't say the conflict, the current issue, is internet outages. The Israeli government doesn't seem to have followed the behavior of most authoritarian regimes, if I call them one of those, by cutting off the internet, so people cannot use apps like TikTok or WhatsApp or anything to communicate. What has been happening, of course, is that as your rockets explode and all that, there's power cuts, in which case it knocks out your internet. So maybe it, I don't know. I mean, I haven't read that piece, but I bet it's full of some juicy metrics in there too. So it'll be worth a read. So I'll look out for that piece, Shel. Thanks for sharing it.
Sure. Our next episode will be on Monday, June 14th. So mark your calendars. Presumably you're subscribed to the show, so you'll be notified, or it'll just automatically download anyway. And we continue to do our Zoom chats at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Thursdays. We enjoy the heck out of those. Dan mentioned them in his report. He says it's a nice break to have a half-hour conversation with other people in the FIR community, and you're welcome to join us. Just drop us a note to fircomments@gmail.com, and one of us will send you the coordinates, how to join these. It's called a Zoom chat, obviously, because it's on Zoom, and I know you all know how to use Zoom these days. We'd also love to hear from you. Send a comment to fircomments@gmail.com, or, video, attach up to a 3-minute audio file if you want us to play it. But if you send a video, we're doing this on YouTube, so we could actually incorporate that. You could record your comment directly from the FIR website. Click the Send Voicemail tab on the right-hand side of the page. You can record up to 90 seconds. You can record multiple 90-second clips. I can stitch those together. Leave a comment directly on the show notes for this episode at firpodcastnetwork.com. Share your thoughts on the FIR community on Facebook. And of course, we are always happy to see your reviews on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And until June, that will be a 30 for immediate release.
Okay, I'm going to hit the stop button.
And I will end the broadcast.